Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Southern Gateway Chorus live stream, the only place where the lead singer actually refers to the second best voice in the quartet. My name is Zach Coleman.
And my name is Joe Hunter, and welcome tonight. And truer words have never been spoken, Zach.
Well, it says two baritones. I mean,
well, I started as a lead, and then I ascended. I ascended to baritone.
And God forgives you. So, Joe, what is our theme tonight?
Others would say devolve.
Sure.
We have I think we have a very interesting theme for tonight. You know, as you threw that back to me, we over the last number of weeks, we've been looking at a lot of different aspects of the barbershop hobby from the standpoint of, particularly from judges and some of the history of judging and competition. But there's a whole other component here that we haven't talked about as much. And that is, you know, one of the most wonderful things about this hobby is the fact that people care for each other and are always looking to help improve
That's right.
what we do artistically. And so we've got this whole group of people who, we call them, I'm sure they're called in other artistic things, coaches.
Sure.
And we've got this whole coaching cadre. And so there's this culture of coaching that barbershop has, and it's a very supportive and a very, I think one of the most positive aspects of our hobby. And so a lot of our judges do also coach. A lot of our coaches judge.
Sure.
But the coaching, the whole coaching world and the whole coaching function is almost a thing unto itself. And it's something that I think is really specific and special to what we do as a hobby. So tonight's episode is really all about coaching. And along those lines, we count ourselves tremendously fortunate tonight to have with us one of the premier coaches in our hobby, and also someone who's a great friend of mine, someone who's also a judge, as I said, being a judge,
and also has the distinction. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Huh?
I'm sensing a theme here with your guests.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've found myself incredibly fortunate with is having all these wonderful people who I'd like to think of friends, and they've been willing to put up with us and get on and join the time. So that's a wonderful thing. Teresa Weatherby, who is joining us tonight, is not only one of the premier performance coaches in our hobby, but is also a judge, a performance judge in the BHS world. And above and beyond that is the category director, which kind of relates to category specialist in the Harmony Inc. world. And I've worked with her in that role kind of as a mentor and friend. And we've known each other for way too many years, but it's okay. And but have watched as, Teresa has had more and more positive and profound impact on our hobby, particularly in the world of theater and performance. So with all that being said, I'll kind of kick it over to Teresa and say, welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, hey, Joe and Zach. It's so good to be here. Thank you for asking me to.
It's fantastic to have you. For those at home who, even after that rave review, might not know who you are, just give us the 60 seconds. Who are you? Where'd you come from?
Well, I'm a Canadian, so don't hold that against me. I hail from a little town in Nova Scotia. It's actually about 6,500 folks that live there. It hasn't changed much since I grew up there. And that's where I was introduced to barbershop. They didn't have much for entertainment in terms of live theater, but we did have a couple of barbershop choruses and a few quartets. So that was kind of the entertainment for us in our little town. I joined barbershop when I was 16, and I'm not going to do the math. I'm not even going to let you do the math, but that was a while ago. Celebrating actually 40 years with Harmony Incorporated. So maybe you can figure out the math, but I'll tell you what, being introduced to barbershop changed my life. And I can honestly say that if it wasn't for that, I don't think I'd be where I am today.
And before we get too
So
far into anything, can we just talk about that sentiment for a second? I feel like there's not a single barber shopper on the planet who wouldn't make that exact statement. Joe, tell me I'm wrong.
No, that's you know, it's matter of fact, isn't that kind of a kind of it's a theme that cuts across almost all of our guests,
Yep.
right, and all the people we've talked with. It's amazing how life changing this hobby and this, well, if you want to call it a hobby, I've always just called it a calling.
Calling a lifestyle, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it does sound like a cliche, but it's so true. And I believe, as I did a little 8-minute TED talk for the BHS for Harmony University this week, and the one thing I pointed out was, we see each other around the circuit, whether it be judging or on the competition stage or even singing a tag, and we never know each other's backstory. In fact, we don't really talk about what we do for a living or what our beliefs are or anything. But if you were to ask, how did you get here? The same question you just asked me, Zach, I bet, I'll guarantee just about everybody will have the same sentiment and same story of, if it wasn't for barbershop, I wouldn't be where I am today or who I am today.
That's a great point.
And yeah, so.
Yeah.
I guess
I
when
did
you're in
want
a
to add in
barbershop
some.
circle. Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I did want to add that in some ways Teresa is selling herself short because, among other things, she has been involved, and all of our audience might not know this, but up until, what was it, just 3 or 4 years ago, this was, the barbershop and the judging community in the BHS was a men's only thing. But Teresa, for years, has been coming to our schools, has been certifying at our schools, has not only been in all the classes, but has excelled and has been a leader even before it was opened up to have women included. So she's a pioneer, one of the real pioneers and trailblazers from the judging standpoint, and a tremendous influencer to all that. And I'll make one other quick little point, and that is just to kind of outline her toughness. She probably didn't mention that she's also was a boxer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? How did you leave that out?
I leave a lot out.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's kind of it's a funny story in a way. And yeah, people don't know this about me, but when I was 39, I had a tremendous back injury from playing softball.
Okay.
I was an athlete. I lived for sports. Besides barbershop, I lived for sports, and so I was trying to get back into shape, more or less, try to get my back able so I could even walk. There was a time where I was crawling practically, and somebody suggested, you've got to build your core, and the one sport that I found to be very helpful with that is boxing. I mean, you think about it, it's all inner muscle, when you're working out and that sort of thing. It's the core that you build from the inside out. And so I took up this women's boxercise class, and it was 20 minutes of aerobics and 20 minutes of learning the skill of throwing jabs and uppercuts, and then eventually working on a bag. And well, it was like anything else that I do in my life, I kind of got addicted to it. So it was not only one day, one night a week, it turned into a couple of nights. And then I was hiring a private coach to come to my house and train me 5 days a week. So I became really, and it never went anywhere in terms of what I was a sparring partner for a Canadian team that I worked with in my hometown. Actually, my trainer was an Olympian from the 1970s. And so I was really blessed to have that. And he said to me once, he said, I wish I had discovered you when you were 18, because I'd make a champion out of you, that sort of thing. And and he said, why don't you go professional? And I was like, I'm 44 years old. I don't want to go professional.
Sure.
So anyway, that's the story.
Did that guy look like Burgess Meredith?
Yeah, exactly. He smoked cigarettes.
We're gonna have to talk about this after the show, because I just recently introduced my girlfriend to the Rocky movies, and she didn't like them. So you and I are gonna need to touch base.
All right.
All right. So let's get the barbershop real quick. So
yes.
You have come on tonight to talk to us about the world of coaching. Do you have like a philosophy or like a main strategy when you walk into a coaching session, quartets, courses, whatever? Do you have something specific you're thinking about, or is it kind of just go in and see what needs to happen?
Well, I think it's like anything else. I really want to get to know the performer first. I want to know what they have to offer, what their skills are. And they'll usually tell you, and I don't mean verbally, but they'll show you whether I say, okay, why don't you perform a song for me? Why don't you do something for me? I mean, otherwise I can coach, you can coach generically, but that doesn't help the specific performance or performer. So I think it's important that you get to know who you're coaching, as much as you can. And with my years of experience, I've learned to do that rather quickly, actually. And so then you determine the level that they're at, and you can start to, if they perform more than one song for you, then you can start to see patterns unfold, and then you get to, okay, this is a skill set that they're lacking, or
Sure.
maybe they're really good at something. So you talk to them about that. There's no plan really, unless they ask you, can you help us with this? And and that's kind of the mindset that I go in with.
Sure. That makes
So,
sense.
so Teresa, my question would be why become a coach? What was it that motivated you?
So there was something that was told to me at one point in my career that said I was a natural at what I did, on the stage, because I was a dancer. I was a majorette, I marched in parades. I was a performer, if you can, Joe, you know me.
I do. Yeah.
And it's not always a negative thing, but I loved the stage. I loved being the center of attention in terms of performance. And when you can do something really natural, if you can learn how to teach the skills that make you look like you're doing it with ease, then it makes you a great teacher. And so I was encouraged to become the teacher. Take the skills to the next level. Take what you already know how to do naturally and help others. And with that kind of advice, that's why I wanted to become a coach. And living in Nova Scotia, there's only ever been one Harmony Incorporated Queen quartet that came out of Nova Scotia. So, and I wasn't a quartetter. I sang in a chorus. I loved the chorus aspect of performance. And I never had the quartet experience. So I knew I wasn't going to become a queen to get the credentials to coach. What other way can I get credentials in the world of barbershop? And that was to become a judge. That was the only other way. So and at the time I had to choose what I wanted to be a judge in. And it was either interpretation or stage presence. Well, in my mind, I couldn't separate them. So I didn't do anything for a few years until I heard about the presentation category. And I thought, oh, that sounds more like it. So Wayne Wright was actually the one who talked to me about the presentation category. And I went to a school where it was a Harmony intensive training school where I learned more about it. And that year I applied for the judging program. And so I figured if I could, get in as a judge, then that would give me the credentials to take me one step further to teach and to coach. See, I don't look at it as coaching. I look at it as teaching. But
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's really interesting because, and again, I can't approach your resume in terms of as a teacher, but as a performer, it very much resonates with me because I was not trained, but yet I was always been told I'm very natural as a performer. For me, I kind of came to the judging and the coaching part relatively late, and it was then having to figure out how I did some of that because to help other people. Because for me, it just kind of came natural. It sounds like the same kind of thing with you, and that it was just natural for you. So now you had to break it down to actually understand what it was that you could then help other people with.
That was tough. I'll tell you what, I remember the first time I had to teach a choreography plan, something that I could do because I was a dancer and a majorette, and I knew patterns. I knew how to do it naturally. And to teach others to do it, I struggled with how to instruct that without getting frustrated and like, come on, why can't you do this? This is easy, And I soon learned that you have different learners. So there's different ways to approach the teaching aspect of it. And it was quite a learning experience for me in many ways, as I started teaching at schools, at, other ensembles that might want to, and I was also in musical theater. So that was another part that, I brought into the barbershop world, was that my life experience with theater as a choreographer and a vocal coach. So, I mean, little people don't know that about me either. I worked with the local, community theaters and private instructions for, players as well. So, and I soon started to kind of meld them all together and realize there's really no separation here. A performer is a performer, and what they're trying to achieve and, on the stage is the same thing. So I think that's how I grew, as a coach and a teacher. And that's how I think like you said earlier, I was breaking ground in the barbershop world, because that's not something we were used to either.
Sure. I mean,
right. And it's interesting that, and Zach, some of this probably you can now kind of correlate to what we've been hearing over the last number of weeks, right? I mean, this all dovetails. It dovetails so well. Where what might have at one time felt groundbreaking or, almost like a maverick, now it's mainstream for us. We've taken it in a direction so that people like Teresa are our go-to people for these things. And it really does makes a heck of a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean,
Oh yeah, I that's why I like that we've done this episode today as a nice culmination of the whole thing. It's just proof that there's not the separation between what somebody wants and what somebody else wants. It's all, this is where we're going. And even the people who are teaching the quartets and choruses, here's a way to make your performance better. Even they're like, yeah, it's this is what you want, even when it's not just contest. And I love that. That's great.
Well, it's very interesting. I think we used to have it backwards. And Teresa, you can correct me if you're wrong, but I think the way it used to work was the coaches would wait to hear what the judges thought and then try to coach to what the judges wanted.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. I mean, we represent the audience, of course, and it's never about what we want. It's what the music is asking of you, the performer. And I think you're right. It is kind of backwards. In the past, if you're referring to the past, absolutely.
Right. We've been trying to change that, right? We've been trying to change it around.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I'm hoping and I'm seeing some change in as well, is that we're not really judging. Let's not focus on judging the performance, strictly the performance. Let's work with the performer to help the performance to be better. If we can educate and give the skills to the performer, then the level of the performance is only going to go up. The entertainment level is only going to go up. It's this lack of understanding of what your role is on the stage, really. And in the past, we've just, here's a couple of songs. So for contest, you're going to sing a couple of songs. No. First of all, let's not call it a contest. It's another performance. In this performance, you only get to perform 2 songs. No, just sing. I kind of hate that expression when someone says, well, let's just sing this song.
Why do I feel like I could already tell that sentence was coming before you said it?
Yeah. So you have an opportunity to perform 2 songs, and so what's the best way we can communicate these to your audience? Is there a correlation or, a package deal here? Or is it just, act 1 versus act 2, and there's so much more to think about than just go on the stage and sing 2 songs. And for the longest time, that was the focus.
So that leads me to a question, because you were saying earlier that a lot of coaching is learning the group and teaching their style, but it also seems like, even from the past couple of weeks talking to judges, we're all kind of striving to end up at the same similar end point, with some individual differences. So is there maybe one big piece of like coaching that you give to a majority of groups that you coach? Is there like some big thing that's like, hey, do this, and that causes a massive change in everybody you say? Anything like that?
I wish I'd be a millionaire, wouldn't I?
A little bit.
Well, it's because every performer on, every performing ensemble, and that's a quartet or a chorus, they're their own unique personality. They have they're them. You can't give the same advice. I mean, you can give some similar advice, but you want them to discover who they are. And, there's ways to help them do that. I remember working with this one quartet, and I'll remain nameless because they're international champs and they wouldn't want me to tell the story. But, when I first started working with them, they're really gung-ho young kids at the time. And
does it rhyme with schmold schmool?
No. So, nice try though. So they wanted to, they were gung-ho, they wanted to win and they wanted to be great. And I knew that, and they had the ability to do it. And I said to them, okay, so what? You're going to make it, you're going to win your district and you're going to make it to the, international level and probably make the 20, even the 10 in a couple of years. But my question to you is, what's going to make the audience remember you? What's going to make that impact on the audience so much so that they're going to say, what was that quartet that did, and they're going to name exactly what you did. You see, it's never about, well, I shouldn't say this, never about the singing, because it is, and I'll have my singing friends on top of me for this, but there's more to it than the singing aspect of it or the musicality aspect of it. It's how you leave your audience feeling, and whether they're smiling with you or laughing with you, or sometimes they don't even remember your name, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Teresa. In fact, what you just said, I think, were almost the exact words that Jay Butterfield, as a singing guy, said last week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. I like Jay. I knew he was smart.
Because he agreed with you. Is that where that came from?
That's
right. Real quick before we keep going, did it rhyme with blocal blectrum?
No,
okay.
No, but they do have they have a very motivated dad helping. Yeah, that's all right, but we won't talk about
that. Yes, sure. That's right. We won't. How'd you know, Joe?
Gotcha.
No, I love them. But
wasn't the rest of the story that they got at least one of them got so frustrated that they threw something?
Joe, here's the thing. When you're working to become the best at your genre, it's like any other, if you want to be the best swimmer, you've got to have the skills. It's not based on talent alone. But there's always something different about that person that will shine, or that ensemble that will shine. And sometimes it's hard to admit, or sometimes it's hard to make that discovery, especially when you're only at the beginning of your journey. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Along the way, you can start to see things unfold, saying, okay, maybe we should go down this path. This seems to work for us. Maybe we should go down this path. But the unique thing about this ensemble is that they did figure it out rather quickly, and they did become, international champions. And I was proud to be a part of that journey with them, even though I made one mad.
Well, but Teresa, I would actually be surprised, trading in the kind of stuff that we do, that you wouldn't see more of that. In other words, a lot of times those kind of, when you're dealing in the emotional world and you're trying to get people to bring it out and to try to make that happen, you've got to believe you're going to always see, or a lot of times see, that kind of frustration. And a lot of times it takes that level of breakthrough to make it happen, right?
Yeah, and that breakthrough, you may not be present when they actually make that discovery. Right, and then, later on, you see that they did, and you're pretty happy about it. Coaches, there's some coaches that work behind the scenes, and then some are very present, and need to be present. And I've learned that I'm kind of like a mom in a way, and I don't mean this because I'm a woman in a man's world, because it's no longer that. Right. But, as Joe pointed out, I've been doing this a long time with the BHS world, and it's not always been, acceptable. So I think of myself as a mom. I've got to leave my kids with some good basic, whether it's the manners or the skill sets on how to do things in their lives, so that someday when I let go, I know that they're going to go down the right path. And, you know, I've seen a lot of that. I feel like I have had, you know, guys come up to me later and say, just because we don't have you as a coach anymore doesn't mean you didn't teach us the right foundation. You didn't give us the foundation we needed. And that's kind of rewarding, you know, to know that you did make an impact, even though, and that's the other thing, and Joe will know this too, is that along journeys, they switch, you know, they'll change out coaches thinking that they'll get different not thinking, they do get different information. Sure. It might even be the same information said differently, but they need fresh and new. And as long as they keep, you know, on their path and they get the right coaches, then I'm okay with that. I'm happy about that.
Well, if you'll excuse me, I have to go call my mom.
And if my kids are listening, call me.
Yeah, right. You call her right now.
Knowing your mom, she does know best though, Zach, but that's okay.
Oh yeah. Well, she's also a teacher, so.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask two questions. You can choose to answer or not, Teresa. And
All
that
right.
is, can you tell us what was maybe your best, what was your best coaching moment, or maybe your favorite coaching moment, and what was your least favorite or worst moment coaching?
Oh, coaching. I think we just talked about the worst.
Well, her worst moment of coaching, she had to go on this dumb stream one time and talk to some guys.
Right.
My best coaching moment is, that's the thing. You never know when it's your best until it's past, I think. You know what I mean? Like for me, I was working with a quartet in Boston. They had just started working together. It was a Harmony Inc. quartet. And I remember working with the lead. The lead seemed to struggle a lot with the hands. We're talking 20 years ago, you know? And even back then, I would get distracted by a lot of her handwork. So I felt like I was picking on her a lot. You know, felt like I was, oh boy, I'm so sorry, but this is interfering with the whole performance if you continue to do this. And you have to be, sometimes you have to be blunt, but if you have a relationship with this, you know, with your ensembles, you have you can be blunt. And so I felt like I was working her hard. But later on, after I was no longer their coach and they had moved on their journey, and I remember I was standing in the back of the room at the Harmony Inc. International, and the call off went off, and the quartet had won gold. They won the crowns. And I watched the ceremony where they placed the crown and the medals on them and everything. And she ran down the center of the aisle after the ceremony was over and ran right to me and said, "If it wasn't for you, I would never have won this gold medal." So I knew that the hard work and, you know, working with her to get past that was worth it for her, at least. So that was kind of a gold medal moment for me.
Cool.
And
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not crying.
Yeah.
I'm crying.
I will say this, Zach, and to everybody else out there, you know, if people think that this is all glamour, you should understand what it's like in the life of a coach very often. And the one I can very much relate to, a story with Teresa, is, you know, Teresa, we had asked her to come in and coach our quartet up all night, and had it all worked out, had a great weekend all scheduled. She was going to be coming into, at the time, we were all in New York, so she was coming into New York, and we had, 4 days, and was going to be all wonderful and set up. And the day before Teresa arrived, we got hit with the biggest snowstorm in 25 years.
Yeah.
However, Teresa's plane still flew, and it did come into New York. And before the storm really hit to its full intensity, he was able to get to the hotel near where one of our guys lived. Then the storm hit and completely paralyzed everything. So now
I didn't.
Teresa had flown this whole distance, gone this whole way, and now was trapped in a hotel with no food.
Yeah, they didn't even have the restaurant open. They couldn't because the snow was so high. The workers couldn't get to the hotel.
Jeez.
So I was like
Well,
whole
and
36 hours with no food, no place to get food. Yeah, it was
Jeez.
pretty bad.
yeah, and we got a grand total of an hour's worth of rehearsal in the night when the storm just started.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the weekend was all of us being trapped in our houses.
Yeah.
So that was, Teresa had a 4-day weekend where all she did was kind of come to New York, get trapped into a Holiday Inn, and starve. So that's
Hey,
the
listen, the
glamour.
good news is I lost 5 pounds. Okay. So, I always look at the bright side.
I don't think that's the part that was important in that story. I'm going to throw it out there. I don't want to be that guy.
No, but that's what we get. That's what, that's part of the glamour of the whole thing, right?
Yeah. I tell you what, there was another story, and I hope these people aren't watching. Well, she wouldn't know. Hosting.
Oh, I hope they
oftentimes-
are watching.
Yeah. Oftentimes we get to, when we're asked to coach, they'll say, do you want us to put you up in a hotel? But, I'm nice. I'm a Canadian. I just want to, make people happy. So I say, no, that's all right. I'll stay with somebody. And one time I stayed with somebody who happened to be a hoarder. And when I got to the house, there was literally a pathway to the bedroom where I was staying, and then a pathway to the bathroom. And I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know. Wow.
Wonderful.
I was really, so it's not all glamorous, I'll tell you.
Well,
That sounds like a sitcom episode. It really does.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what that is. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you don't know people until you actually go live with them, right?
Sure. Well, before we start tearing down, I have one more thing I want to ask you. So, I'm sure all of our judge friends have also coached before, but you coming in as our coach expert, I want to go from a different perspective real quick, because up to this point we've been talking about, the people you have coached and what advice did you give them? I want to ask you a question on behalf of anybody who might be watching that actually is interested in becoming a coach. What would be your one big piece of advice to them? And I don't mean like when you're coaching, do this. I mean to actually break into it, to get there. What would you be your one big advice for somebody who wants to get to that point?
You have to ask people, and I mean, I can honestly say that's how I started, in a little town in Nova Scotia that had nobody. I mean, to travel to go coach somebody, first of all, they don't know who you are. And you offer your services. You just say, hey, listen, I'm interested in joining I want to become a coach, and I have this many years experience in barbershop, and I would love it if you would give me an opportunity, maybe 15 minutes with your ensemble, get to know people and ask them if you can work with them. And, that helps. They're actually helping you if you ask them. But if you're going to wait, forget about it, because people, if they don't know who you are or they don't know you, then they're not going to ask you. So my mother always said, if you want something, you got to go for it and you got to ask for it, and what's the worst thing that could happen? They could say no. So, okay. And then go on to the next, but find out who's in your local area, and or even get some coaching, maybe in a high school, and say, there's a drama program. Is there any, could I come over and watch your players and, help start, maybe assist you and learn more about the performance category and, the performance aspect of performance, learn some skills. The other thing is to watch some YouTube videos, watch other people coach, sit in on some coaching, ask if you're a friend like Joe, if Joe's your friend and he's coaching locally, say, hey, would you mind if I sat in and watched you coach? You can get so much, experience or learning from other folks. I mean, that's what we do. We learn from each other. We steal sometimes from each other, but most importantly, we learn from each other. So
it's not stealing, it's a tribute.
Yeah, it's a tribute. Especially if they give you kudos for it,
Right.
The other thing, I'll tell you a little story, Zach. When I first became when I was in the judging program and I was a candidate,
Mm-hmm.
I would go and practice at local contests, and then I would start
Okay.
to travel outside of Canada, and I was down into into the States, and especially in the New England area, because that was cheaper for
Sure.
me. Is that whenever I would go and I was a candidate, I would pick the brains of the great judges that were there, and I would
Sure.
ask tons of questions. So it's not always about getting in front of people as much as it is about learning yourself, learning of what you can do when you eventually do get in front of somebody. But
Well, you know what, and Teresa, once again, I think, knowing you as I do, I think it's one of the things that I know you are such a student. I mean, you are a tremendous student, and you're always working to improve and to learn more, and you're always ingesting more of this information from whatever sources, whatever good sources there are. It's what makes you as good as you are, is all that kind of thing, right?
yeah,
And hopefully, I mean, that's a lesson I've tried to learn too. It's just, other people, learn from other people. You don't have to reinvent the wheel in a lot of cases. You just have to make it your own, but start with talking and learning from the best, or try to learn from the best. Speaking of which, who would you say was we all have heroes. Who would you say was your major your biggest influence?
And did his name rhyme with Glow Glunter?
I would never think. I would never think that. I would turn that the other way. I think Teresa's more of my hero.
oh, thank you. In terms of coaching, that's a question you put me on the spot, because there's so many. Honestly, I have so many heroes in the coaching world. I'm sorry, but this time you're second to Marty Lovick. Marty is one of my heroes. To watch him work with people, to watch his humanity, just shine in his he's just so kind and so, and so knowledgeable.
And perceptive and humble and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had Marty on, so yeah. So we
but
understand.
In the past, one of my biggest heroes was Richard Treptow. For any who knows Trep, he was a mentor to me as well, not only in the Harmony Incorporated world, but as well as in the BHS world. He was a big champion of mine in the process, in my journey, and he helped me with understanding that the more you know, the more you grow. Education was so important. Because it wasn't about stepping out there and saying, look what I know. It's what can I learn? What can I learn from you? And I think, like Joe said, is just that continuous journey for me in education is so important. I mean, I'm like Marty. I don't think I ever want to give this up, and I feel like because of the way it's going and the projection of where the barbershop world is going, which is so wonderful. In the real world of performance, it's starting to become a true art form. Not that it wasn't, please don't misunderstand that, but we're starting to be more relevant to the real world of performance.
Sure.
And to be a part of that, that's pretty cool.
And we've discussed that in previous episodes too, about how in the past there was a stigma about barbershop, that it was lame 4 old dudes singing songs, and B, in even the choral communities, how we were more along the lines of not very proper singing technique and just kind of yelling, and how it's definitely transitioned from that.
Yeah, it's so evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was Richard's or Trep's dream and vision, was to be more relevant to the real world of performance. And
it was actually, he had tremendous thrust towards that. I mean, he was also a mentor for me, Teresa, and he was instrumental in getting me into leadership and to kind of following up the relevancy stuff that he started, and again, that's someone we might, if sometime we could get him on, I think that would be a very interesting guest, Zach, because
I'm on board.
Trump is a very interesting guy. He was just named as a judge emeritus even
Yeah.
though he didn't meet all the requirements in terms of the number of years he was involved. You know, they said you have to have a certain X number of years. He didn't have quite those number of years, but the years he was involved, he was so influential
Yes.
that they waived the requirement
Wow.
to give him that award.
Yeah.
But he's also the kind of guy that you would think, oh, here's a really conservative Midwestern kind of button-down guy, and underneath it, he was a revolutionary. It's and I think that's why it worked for him. That's why he worked.
Bravo.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
Unassuming.
Teresa, I think we're going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to say before we call it a night?
Well, it's been fun. Thank you so much. And thank you for allowing me to share my journey and to be able to talk about how I got to where I am today. And again, I'll make that statement that barbershop changed my life, and I can't imagine it without it.
Well, thank you for taking the time and spending it with us, Teresa.
Absolutely.
It's always, as you know, always a tremendous pleasure and joy anytime we can spend together. So thank you so much.
All right.
And
Thanks.
for everybody at home, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. Make sure if you have not yet subscribed to the Southern Gateway Chorus YouTube channel, go ahead and leave a like on this video if you are so inclined, and also hit that little notification bell so that every time we go live, you get a little notification that says we're live. And until next week, my name is Zach Holman.
And my name is Joe Hunter.
And on behalf of the Southern
And
Gateway
we
Chorus.
will see you soon, and happy trails, as they say.